This is To the Point with Michael Williams.
Good morning. President Donald Trump has canceled the Republican National Convention slated for Jacksonville next month, saying, quote, it was not the right time for a big convention, and that he had, also quoting here, to protect the American people, all, of course, in this time of the COVID-19 pandemic. More on that with our roundtable, but first, the Florida primary around the corner on August 18th, and this morning, I'm joined by Oz Vazquez, a Democrat running for Congress in District 18, covering Martin, St. Lucie, and part of Palm Beach County. Mr. Vazquez, introduce yourself to our audience.
Thanks so much for having me. My name's Oz Vazquez, Democrat running for Congress here in the 18th District, the Treasure Coast and Palm Beaches, where I grew up, and proud to ask for folks' support and their vote to represent my community.
Talk about your background. You feel that it uniquely qualifies you to understand, as you've said in some of your campaign literature, those who are working, trying to make ends meet, especially right now. Tell us a little bit about your family background, your educational background, what brought you to where you are today, your professional work leading to today as well.
Absolutely. So I'm the son of immigrants. I was actually born up in Queens, New York. My parents came to this country with nothing, frankly, not even a high school diploma between them. But they worked hard, and my dad was a taxi driver. My mom worked in the garment district in New York. My dad was a taxi driver. When he had to stop driving for health reasons, we moved down to Port St. Lucie. I was about 8 years old. Grew up here relying on Social Security, Medicare, worked my way through high school, college, made it to Harvard Law, actually. And then spent most of my career paying it back, representing retirees and pension funds and working people and unions. Worked for the Attorney General's office in Tallahassee for a few years, and worked in private practice in the pension field again. And again, trying to sort of pay it forward. I had the shot at living the American dream, and I want to make sure that our district, my community, has the voice it needs in Congress. I grew up here. I met my wife here. I got married here. This community gave me my family, and it deserves someone who's fighting for them, who's looking out for them, particularly for working folks, for retirees. We're not getting that now, and that's the contrast I'm offering. Somebody who looks out for the district, puts results and ideas before party. And at the moment, we have Congressman Brian Mast, who votes with Donald Trump about 90% of the time and is not doing right by the folks in this district. That's the contrast.
Son of Cuban and Colombian immigrants, just to fill out the picture a bit more. Again, Harvard Law, union side labor lawyer, also Deputy Solicitor General for the state of Florida. You've talked about your focus on working class families and the poor, saying you understand you came from a family that worked diligently and hard to achieve their portion of the American dream. What are the central issues that you would take to Washington? I know there's a lot of priorities we could pick, but especially in this age of coronavirus, what are the chief issues, should you be elected, that you take to Washington and fight for, and specifically how?
Absolutely. So the coronavirus, first and foremost, we need to make sure that we are getting through this crisis and looking out for each other and putting the facts, the science first, so that we get through this safely and look out for each other on the economic side of things as well. And that means listening to experts. That doesn't mean listening to politicians. First and foremost, we've got to get through this, get each other through this, and be ready for the next crisis and the next one after that. And that takes the type of approach I was talking about before. Healthcare. I believe that everybody should have access to safe and affordable healthcare. I mean, I, again, grew up on Medicare. My dad got sick. We were knocked off our feet. And if it weren't for Social Security, for Medicare, for having that ability to rely on those programs, I wouldn't be here talking to you today. So we need to reduce costs. We need to increase access, reduce prescription costs. I tell you what I won't do. Congressman Mast voted against the Affordable Care Act, voted against the bill to reduce prescription drug prices. And I worked for the AARP Foundation before jumping into this and saw exactly how people are being squeezed by that crisis. That's something we need to make sure we fix on.
Mr.
And the
Vazquez,
environment, of course.
We'll talk about that in a moment. Before you have a chance to potentially face off against Mr. Mast, and he faces a Republican primary as well. You're facing off against your Democratic opponent, Pamela Keith. When I talked to her last week, she said, among other things, she'd like to see us eventually go single payer, which is above and beyond what the nominee of your party, Joe Biden, wants. Do you support single payer or an extension and improvement on the existing Affordable Care Act?
I believe that, again, that we need to make sure we're expanding access to healthcare and doing it the right way. And in our district, we have thousands of folks that have healthcare they like. I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old. I want to have that comfort of knowing that the doctor is going to be available And so Vice President Biden, I believe he has the right approach of having this market approach. We have a public option sitting alongside healthcare that folks may not want to have to turn away from. And I believe that will be a great step in expanding and strengthening what we've been able to do with the Affordable Care Act. And again, Congressman Mast voted against the Affordable Care Act. There's a lawsuit pending in the courts right now during a pandemic where the Trump administration is trying to do away with the Affordable Care Act, and Congressman Mast supports it.
Environmental issues always of huge concern. The algal issues that we fought for years there, work on trying to push for the reservoir south of the lake. Talk about your focus there.
Absolutely. So that's a critical issue. I'm glad I snuck it in. I'm glad we got the chance to talk much more about it. And when I say sneak in, it's a huge critical issue. It's been a central focus of my campaign. It's not something that's an afterthought. It's critical to so many folks in this district. And I believe that we should be fighting to have the type of Florida environment my wife and I grew up in, for my kids, for everybody's kids. I worked for the Attorney General's office in Tallahassee on Florida, Georgia, different water system, but I fought to preserve Florida's environment. And I knew the complexity that gets into the river systems, into the ecology, into the legal background. And I know that there's so much more that can be done for the safety, the health of our river system in the St. Louis River for Lake Okeechobee pollution. We are not doing enough to make sure that Lake Okeechobee is not polluted, that we're going after the folks that are making Lake Okeechobee polluted, to tackle the cyanobacteria, to tackle the drivers. The climate crisis is a huge issue. There are 3 ingredients that go into cyanobacteria and the blue-green algae, and that's nutrients, that's the pollution, sunlight, we're always going to have sunlight, and the warmth of the water. And it gets complicated. That's part of the background. But Congressman Mast voted against the bill to put us back on the Paris Climate Accords. When he was running for the job, he said, I believe in climate change. But when he had the chance to do something about it, he voted with his party.
Again, we remind our viewers that though you and your opponent in the Democratic primary keep mentioning Congressman Mast, you first have to face off against one another. Why are you the pick in your mind? What do you say to voters who have a choice between you and Ms. Keith? Why you are the better candidate in the Democratic primary? And again, tie that in to what we're dealing with coronavirus. It's had an outsized impact on the working and working poor. And of course, we have the issue in the discussion in this country about race and equality. All of that, tie that together in terms of what your legislative focus would be and why you are the better choice for Democrats than she is.
So I'm glad you brought up those issues, because the seriousness of the issues, the importance of all the different challenges we face are the primary reason why we need to make sure we have the right type of voice in Congress, somebody who's putting the district first. I will work with anyone who is going to advance the interests of our district. I will push back on anyone who is going to be against our district, regardless of what his or her party identification is. That's the difference. And we have way too much at stake. And people see it. People see that these Twitter fights, people see all this back and forth, and they don't feel like they're getting real results, real solutions. I have a record of service. I have that personal experience and background where I know what matters to people, and I can bring that contrast to the voters and let them know that you have in me someone who's going to look out for this district and fight for this district and fight for our interests, and who's going to put our interests before, again, a party label, to have that type of voice, that type of perspective. That is it's all the more critical given how high the stakes have increased in the last few months.
And a note, we have asked the Republicans in Congressional District 18 to share their views as well. Still waiting to hear back. A portion of my discussion upcoming with John Bolton about his experiences in the Trump administration and his new book, The Room Where It Happened. Stay tuned.